in my video yesterday, I got an interesting comment. Um, y'all can go check it out. Basically, it was kind of like, hey, good job on 420 days and sticking with it. And, the gentleman had pointed out on the comment that my channel only has basically less than 100 subscribers. And just commenting on the fact that, hey, it's a good job you're doing that kind of in spite of the low count of subscribers and viewers. And it's a good. The comment basically was I think meant to kind of pose the question of are you able to grow the channel and to kind of to focus on trying to find ways to get more subscribers to the channel. Um, and it's a good comment, and it brings up, I suppose, an important point, which is when doing the channel, you have to be willing to grow the audience in a way. With this platform, you've got to try and somehow increase the viewers. And how does one do that? Well, the challenge is a couple fold here, and it's one of the things where I've kind of viewed the YouTube game here, this sort of vlog, as a very, very, very long term thing. Because I've imagined it was going to take quite a while to get anything going on with this channel. When one looks at like AuthorTube, for example, it's not a very big part of YouTube. AuthorTube, writing communities on here, most channels, if you look at them, are not bringing a lot of numbers. There's a couple that have gotten over 100,000, I think, and that's basically it. It's a handful. Everything else, it varies. You have some that are in, kind of like the high 10,000, the high tens of thousands, so like 70, 80, 90K. And you have a lot, then you have a few that are lower, that are in like, like the 30K range. And there are a ton that are under 10,000. AuthorTube is just not particularly big. It's not a very, very large portion. So already I'm going into a market where there's not a lot of general interest on YouTube for that. But the other thing to keep in mind as well is I'm kind of the only one that's doing what I'm doing, which is both good and bad. I don't think anyone else is doing a daily vlog of their writing process. I could be wrong. I haven't done, I haven't delved too much into the realms of AuthorTube here, so there might be someone else. But as far as I know, I'm kind of the only guy that's doing like a daily vlog on their writing process, and with it, it's not visually that interesting, right? What I'm doing with this video here is not particularly interesting. Each time I film myself in my office, and then basically I do kind of the voiceover here where I talk about a certain aspect of writing. I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. I think it's a different way of approaching the process, and it's showing it's serving a purpose, kind of a multi-purpose, which is it's to show how long the process takes, how long it takes to actually get something published, how long you go sort of struggling through this whole process here, which is important. My goal basically is that people will see this and in part realize there's a lot of monotony. There's a lot of time where you aren't getting any kind of public recognition for your work, and you're sort of just working behind the scenes here, and that eventually there's sort of a payout on the other end of it eventually. So that's part of it. Other thing too is it keeps me on track. It forces me. This vlog forces me to go to the keyboard every day, as well. So it serves kind of that purpose, as well. But yeah, I think in the very immediate sense, growing this channel, it's going to be difficult. It's again, only game in town here. Most people that do AuthorTube, either they do like book reviews, or they're doing like writing lessons, which I've done on here that no one seemed that interested in. They're doing other things basically with this that simply I'm basically not doing it. And so what I've seen as far as the long-term growth of the channel, I think it'll come in two forms here. I think eventually I will have kind of a higher subscriber count, but it's gonna happen when I hit one of two factors. I think both. One will be actually having books out there. So having stories published, having books that are published and available. I think that will be one of the things that will drive people to this channel. I think is if people like my work, they will sort of just I suppose, just by kind of an automatic thing, will perhaps check out my my channel here. Just basically use the book basically to bring people in. I think people will perhaps be interested in seeing my process. I think that'll also lend a lot of credibility as well. And so I think part of it is that. I think part of it is just when I finally have publications, that will be one of the things that brings it in. The other thing I think that will eventually start to grow the channel is when I hit a very high number. When I get to like day 1,000, for example, like 1,000 days, without missing a day writing. That's impressive, right? Like the higher you go with this, the more impressive it becomes. The more impressive this whole thing is. It's very easy to do this, for 30 days. Some people may not be, but in general, you wouldn't think 30 days is that impressive if someone told you they wrote every day for 30 days. A year, you go, okay, yeah. And so the more you compound this, I think the more interest will be garnered just because you're doing it for so long. But that's how I foresee the channel growing. I think with that as well, certainly I think there'll be certain topics that'll come up on occasion that I can go into more. I think as time goes on, I might be better at like figuring out the sort of marketing side of this channel, of YouTube, basically, where I'll finally find like a thumbnail maybe that looks kind of cool and eye-catching. I might find a different way of shooting these videos that's more interesting. There are things that you play with. There's a certain form that you play with, in a certain format that you can kind of toggle with as you go along with this. But ultimately, it's a learning process. The thing about YouTube is that you learn by doing. Like, you sort of do something for a while, realize it's not working, then make small readjustments until it does. Yeah, so that's I suppose like kind of my thoughts on this whole on YouTube in general and on applying it. But subscriber count has not necessarily been, again, one of those things that I've cared too much about, in part because I sort of went in knowing there wasn't going to be a lot. And the other thing is, my channel doesn't necessarily have an identity. That's the other cold truth that I've known. Like I'm very self-aware. Like, I've realized this channel doesn't have much of an identity. I've got on here a writing vlog. I've got on here a weekly, I guess, author podcast, and I've got on here a weekly basically a chess stream. Right. Those are three different areas of videos that are basically put on one giant channel. So it's not it's hard to find someone who hits all those metrics, right? It's you always want to go for like the low tail end of the bell curve, right? To be very, very niche. But you find someone that likes nerdy author talk and likes a writing vlog and likes chess. That's a pretty it's a pretty small group of people right there. It's a pretty small segment of the population. So a lot of this is more about, as much about just kind of showing myself as it is about having some sort of direct resource for others to take something away. So again, when you kind of reach that nexus point where you got these different sort of elements on your channel, and none of it necessarily completely overlaps the other one, you're going to inevitably, I think, draw, again, just less people in. Nobody, some people might really enjoy the writing vlog. They may not care much for the podcast. They may not care much for the chess. Vice versa. My chess videos get the most hits of anything on here. Those are the ones that maybe get close to like 50, 60 views, whatever. And again, that's 1 day a week. So if I'm posting like one chess video a week here and I get 6 more days of writing stuff, nobody's watching that, right? It lacks an identity. And that's okay, because the channel is me, right? It's me being my authentic self in a way. I'd much rather be have a channel that's very, very real and kind of showcases different aspects of my personality, than to kind of narrow my focus down. At least now. Maybe that change in the future. Perhaps in the future, maybe I create two channels, whatever. But for now, that's kind of the style, and that's sort of what hampers me. And so with that, for now, I'm going to kind of just keep rocking on, just keep moving forward here, and maybe eventually I'll start to grow this channel, but it's gonna take time, and I'm in this for the long game.